Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. On today's episode, I want to welcome Josh Connolly. As one of the UK's most influential mental health advocates, he regularly speaks on BBC, ITV and Channel 5 News. He runs resilience workshops for village schools and global brands alike. He's doing some amazing work. I had such a great chat to him. He shared his story, he opened up, he showed vulnerability. He talked about his lowest points when he contemplated taking his own life, how he came back from that and got his life on track and found his life's purpose. Again, it was such an amazing interview to take part in, so I really hope you get a lot out of this. And just another reminder that the Move Your Mind book is now available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com, and we have released the Move Your Mind community platform. All you need to go to is moveyourmind.me to find all of the links. It's a platform that we have all of our courses, information, live events, and much, much more. Would love you all to check it out. Thanks again for supporting us, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Finally, we had an issue with my external microphone. It didn't connect. Small technical problem. The quality is not quite as good as usual from my end, but I hope you still enjoy the episode. Apologies again. Josh, thank you, mate, for coming and making the time to talk to me. I actually came across you on Instagram. Someone had sent me a clip of you talking, and I looked you up, and I was like, this is amazing. I love connecting with people, you know, working in the field you're in, and it looks like you're making so much impact, such important work. So, yeah, first of all, just thank you for making the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. And it's one of the real positive sides of social media, right? I think social media gets such a bad rap. We forget to mention some of the positive aspects of it. So, yeah, it's good to be connected in that way.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many negatives, so it is good that it can have, you know, that side of it as well. It helps you learn about people. It's pretty much the way that I find all of the guests for the podcast through social media. So it does have that side. Before we get into it, do you mind just giving a bit of a background on yourself and I guess how you came to what you're doing today?
Yeah, I guess to give you kind of a brief outline, I work as a resilience coach today. So I work primarily with individuals and organizations, helping them to kind of promote a new idea of what it means to be resilient. One that is more about understanding ourselves on a deeper level, so we can make sure that we get our needs met, however that looks for us as a person. And I came to that where I've been doing that now full time for a little over 4 years, I think. And I came to it through my own experiences. I grew up with my dad was an alcoholic, and so I grew up sort of believing that life was tough and you have to kind of bite down on the gum shield and get through life. And I really felt that for a lot of my life. But that led me to a place where I had a terrible problem with addiction. I struggled with alcohol and other things, and was sort of in a real desperate way by my mid-20s. By the time I was 24, I was in a lot of debt. I sort of always held down a job, but my first daughter was born when I was 18 years old. And so I was really lost. And I quit drinking when I was 24. So in 2012 is when I stopped using alcohol. And I thought that might make all my problems go away, but it didn't. It actually just left me with all of my problems, if I'm honest with you. And since then, really, I've been on a journey of understanding myself, understanding why I show up to the world and why I experience the world in the way that I do. And, you know, during that 10-year journey that it's been since I quit using alcohol, I guess somewhere along the line, I decided I wanted to share what I've learned with the world. And that's where I am and what I do today.
Yeah, wow. I mean, so many things in there. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's such an important part of the education as well with, you know, like what you were saying with alcohol, that we sort of get told that if we stop doing those behaviors when they're negative, that things are just automatically going to be better or okay, or, you know, it's not really, we're not taught to look deeper into what's going on or find the root cause, because the alcohol, I guess, is just one of many vehicles that, you know, could be used to cope. So I guess that must have been a pretty big and ongoing journey. I mean, for all of us in different ways, but that would have been, yeah, something that was sort of a big journey for you to sort of start delving into?
Yeah, I mean, initially, like there was a period of time when I stopped drinking, and it felt like it did answer all my problems, right? I felt amazing at the beginning that I'd stopped, and I could remember the weekends, and I wasn't sort of losing all of my money in one day when I got paid and stuff like that. But I think as time went by and it kind of settled down, that's when I was sort of realized that actually alcohol was just something that I used to try and get away from the problem. Alcohol wasn't the problem. The way that I used alcohol was the reaction to the problem, really. And that's when the work really began, I think, for me as a person, because then I had to kind of look at myself and question, why do I struggle so much? Where does that come from? And like what I've found really is that so much of how I experience the world and so much of how I behave makes a lot of sense when I trace it back and I start to look at my life and I start to look at it in that way. And so I guess like at the core of the message that I try and get across to people is that it's not necessarily about being broken and needing fixing. It's just more about having to become aware and understand why I feel the ways that I do, and that's been the journey for me.
Yeah. And I mean, how much of how many people do you think are sort of acting out because of things that have happened in their past? Like what you were saying with your upbringing and these different things that happen. How many people do you think, whether it's, I mean, trauma is obviously a huge thing. From the work you've done, have you seen that's something that a lot of people are unaware that they're affected by?
Yeah, I mean, like when you ask how many people do I think are affected by it, I think it's like a scale that we all sit somewhere on, right? I think we all have, if you look at trauma as not being about what happened to us, but what happened inside of us as a result of the things that happened to us. If you look at it more like internal wounding, then much like it would be very difficult to reach 18 years of age without a little bump or a physical scrape, I think the same's true internally. And I think everyone to some degree is doing something, whether it's alcohol or food or exercise or any other substance or behavior. I think everybody's doing something in a way to escape how they feel to some degree, right? And I actually think that's why the work in the end is about awareness, because I might have stopped drinking alcohol and using drugs in the way that I have, but I've used lots of other different things in the last 10 years to escape the ways that I feel, and I still do, right? And the flip side of that is that sometimes escape is exactly what I need, right? I need a break from how I feel. But I just need to be aware that that's what I'm doing, because I used to just blindly pretend everything was okay when actually it was getting darker and darker all the time,
Yeah, and it's another good point, because I know for me, exercise very quickly went from being a healthy thing to and a way to cope to a very unhealthy thing, and you can start abusing that in the same way that I was with alcohol and different things. That you can become sort of obsessive with anything, whether it's a healthy thing or an unhealthy thing. They can all sort of lead to a similar outcome, really.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about getting addicted to something like exercise, which is, something that happens to me all the time, is nobody calls you out on that, right? And in fact, actually what you get called is dedicated, and you get lots of praise, and people are asking you how you did it, right? Because when you're like obsessed with exercise, you look good, you look in shape. And so everyone wants tips on how to look in shape. And there's been so many times when people have asked me for tips on how to eat well and get in shape. And I think, well, the truth is that I'm running away from how I feel, and I just obsessively exercise all the time, right? So it's a fine line, I think, with things like that all the time. But like you say, if I'm not dealing with how I'm feeling, and I'm just, going for a run for the 5th time today because I can't stand still, because when I do, I hate the way that I feel, it's a problem, and it's really not that different from drinking every day to run away from the ways I feel.
No, it's so interesting because there's so many levels to it, and it's, I guess, like we live in a world where we're taught that, like what you were just saying then, that all of these different behaviors, if you work more, if you got like a CEO of a huge company that's putting in, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, he doesn't have enough time to, spend 5 minutes with his kid, and he's bringing in all this money, and he's doing what society has told us you're meant to do. That's actually applauded, when actually that guy's probably just running away from a million different problems and using different things to prop himself up, and he's going to eventually just completely break and have a meltdown. And it makes it harder to actually break out of that pattern, because we're doing what we're taught we're meant to do.
Exactly. And that's what I've sort of always said, that addiction in and of itself isn't actually stigmatized. It's only certain addictions that are. So like, if you're addicted to alcohol, you might get stigmatized for that, right? If you're addicted to drugs, you might get stigmatized. But if you're addicted to work, well, then, like you said, you'll probably get called a success. And if you look at the person that's 50 years old and, I don't know, lost 2 families because of working all the time, right? They might have loads of money in the bank because that's a byproduct of their working all of the time, but they've been through 2 marriages and they're alone, right? People will go, well, but at least you've got your business and you've worked hard all your life. But if you take the same person and their addiction is alcohol, when they've been through 2 families and they're all alone when they're 50, everyone will say to them, why didn't you just stop when the first marriage broke down, right? And it's because with, an addiction to something like work. I mean, look, top athletes, when you listen to top athletes talk, they sacrifice and give up their whole life for their sport, right? And they're called role models, and rightly so, right? But I mean, a lot of them are probably completely addicted and obsessed with their sport. A lot of them say that, I'm obsessed with this, right? But we applaud that. And obviously, look, there's huge differences here. Alcohol and drugs destroy your life very quickly, right? But some of the underlying internal feelings and some of the underlying emotions as a result of these things are going to be very similar. And the point in that is not that they're exactly the same. The point is that, the successful person on the street is not as different to the homeless person that they walk past as they like to think that they are. Do you know what I mean? They've got way more in common than they believe. And that's the conversation that's not often sort of had.
No, it's sad that it's not had enough. And it is such a fine line. I was living in Vancouver for 2 years, and which I didn't even know they had such a homeless epidemic there. And I was living sort of near Hastings Street, where there's it's one of the biggest, worst sort of cases of it in the world. And I'd walk past it every day, but I'd walk there and just, think about it every time I was going down that area, and just remind myself that literally it might come down to like one extra thing happening in their life going wrong compared to my life or someone else's life that puts you in that position, and they're literally no different. And then once you're in that position, you're stuck in that cycle, and that's what people don't realize, how similar it is. Like you're saying, it's like, it's really, it doesn't take much.
Yeah. Or what worked for them, they might have been through the same as you, but what worked for them turned out to be alcohol and drugs. And what works for me at the moment is, I don't know, work and exercise, right? So like, and who gets to decide which one works for you? Because again, when I look at like alcohol, for example, I don't think alcohol's inherently bad, right? I think it's a great social lubricant. And I think there's lots of people that have healthy, certainly not unhealthy relationships with alcohol. They can use it as a way of having some release and having a bit of wind down, and, as a social lubricant. But people like me, the relationship became too toxic in the end. But that's only because it kind of stopped working. At the beginning, when I used to use it, it did everything that I wanted it to do and more. I loved it, and so I think that's the kind of thing about addiction, is that when you find something that works, if you are carrying like a high level of wounding, then you're going to do what it is that works. You're going to do it a lot, right? Because it makes you feel good. And so the difference is often, I drank to get right in the end. I didn't drink to enhance my life. I drank to just get to an even keel,
Yeah.
And what I do with exercise, and I exercise every day, what I do with that's not too dissimilar. I have to exercise every morning, really, to keep myself mentally in a decent place. You know, if I stop exercising, I really unravel pretty quickly.
No, exactly. At least it's a healthy alternative, and but
Exactly.
exercise, yeah, and it can be used while you're working on the other stuff. And it's the same for me. If I don't, actually, I didn't this morning. I was sort of up because I'm working in Australia, but I can actually feel it. If I don't exercise in the morning, my brain is like not operating properly. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like it is. It's like you need it, but I think these things, and it's again part of the education that we can use these healthy tools not as a solution, but as a sort of one part of this, sort of complicated process of delving into the deeper sort of work to start to break down. Why do we feel these compulsions and this need to do these different behaviors?
Yeah, and finding things that, having that awareness, and like you say, exercising every morning causes no problem, right? It's a routine that I'm in. I do it. I get up early specifically, so it doesn't sort of affect my family routine and all that kind of stuff. It has a good impact on me, right? And I have an awareness of the impact that it does on me, and I also have an awareness of some of the things that it helps me with, right? And I think that's one of the big differences when I was trapped in sort of addiction to alcohol. I wouldn't have sat here and said I had a problem with alcohol, right? I would have said that I work hard, so I play hard, yeah, and I deserve a good drink. And I went a bit over the top last week because I mixed my drinks, but that's not normally what happens, when it clearly was what happened every single time. So it's like steeped in denial. But that awareness that I have in my life today is much less about denial and way more about awareness.
Yeah, for sure. So for what was the career path back then before you got on the path you're on now? What were you sort of, what did that look like?
I literally worked in a factory. So when I left school, I'd like been involved in sort of like gangs and stuff, and I was searching for meaning in my life, and my sort of drink and drug use was pretty out of control by the time I was about 15. But when my first daughter was born, when I was 18, I sort of remember thinking that the game's up now. I need to do life properly. So I got a job, and yeah, it's too young. I mean, like it was certainly too young for me. 18 years old. I look back now. I feel too young to have children now, and I'm 35 nearly. So 18 was 18 was too young. But I got a house. I had a mortgage at 18 years old, and I got a job in a factory. My job was to sweep the floors and empty the bins in the factory. And I moved pretty quickly through my job. Like, I always did well in my work, but again, work was it was a really physical job in the factory. There was loads of overtime, and I realized that I could work really, really hard. And when I worked really, really hard and just got my head down and got into the work, it was another escape. It was another way to not be in my mind, which was a horrible place. So I was working long hours, 7 days a week, earning good money, but spending it all on other addictions, But as a result of the kind of hard work and the graft that I was putting in, I progressed. And by the time I was like 23, I was upstairs in the factory working in the office as part of the leadership team. I was the transport manager. But by the time I was 24, I had 4 children by the time I was 24. I was married. It was an incredibly toxic relationship. And behind all that, the marriage had fallen apart. So by the time I was 24, I was £17,000 in debt. The marriage had completely broken down. I had 4 children, and I was living on a fold-out mattress at my mum's house. And that's when my life really started to unravel. That's when I thought, well, I'll quit drinking alcohol. I couldn't deal with how I felt, really, when you took the alcohol, where I was having like real bad panic attacks. And that's when I actually very seriously planned to take my own life when I was 24, sober. I always say it took me 10 years to nearly drink myself to death. It took me 9 months to nearly sober myself to death. And what the thing was is that when people say you should talk about how I felt at that stage, like, I don't know if people were ready to hear it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't, if I'd have vocalized what I was feeling, it wouldn't have sounded like I'm really struggling with anxiety. It would have been full of like venom and hatred, and I just didn't know where to go with it. And I made a decision to not be here, and I went to see my kids. And because of that decision that I had made, I think what happened is the past became irrelevant. The future was non-existent. And for the first time ever, I was present with my kids, right? Because everything that was clouding my mind was gone because of what I thought was going to happen. And I changed my mind. And it was that moment really of changing my mind where I then realized I need to work on whatever this is inside of me that's causing the problem. And that's been the journey, you know, for the last 10 years. Has been searching within myself and questioning. And, you know, I find things that really work for a while and then they stop, and then I find something else. And I guess the irony is that one of my main obsessions over the last 10 years has been self-work, right? So in and of itself, that's another addiction, right? Just obsessively looking in and trying to find out more about myself. So it all leads back.
Yeah, so many levels to it. But I mean, it's so cool, mate. That's such an amazing story, so powerful. And I mean, that now that you've been able to actually channel that into, you know, like you're saying, doing the self-work, but then also, you know, you're doing this as a career, you're educating other people. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that you're, and I think it's so important as well. That's how we can make real change, hearing from people that have actually been through it. And, you know, people want to relate. So I think it's incredibly powerful. And I know for me, you know, I presume it's similar. It's sort of get as much out yourself by trying to help other people, because it sort of helps you understand yourself in the process as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's one of the key tools really for me staying well is to make sure that I give away. You know, it's been massive for me because I need to stay connected with people regularly. Otherwise, I go into myself and I go into hiding. You know, internally, I'll go into hiding. So to be able to do it as a job, I mean, I have to pinch myself that I do this for work, because, you know, I really, in many ways, have reached what feels like a bit of a pinnacle, where if you asked me if money didn't matter at all, what would you do? Like, my answer would probably be what I'm doing now in my life today, right? Yeah. And I sort of say that tentatively because I don't want to tempt fate. Do you know what I mean? But like, I mean, it's really true for me. It's really true for me. And I'm like I say, I have to pinch myself internally grateful to be able to do it.
Yeah. No, I think it's and again, you know, it's like pretty hard to find that. Like I say to myself all the time, like, and I stress about other things, you know, I'm like still wanting to, you know, I'm naturally competitive, looking at friends that are making a huge amount of money in different startups or businesses or whatever it is, and you get caught up in all of that thinking. But then I remind myself, you know, there's very few people that actually find that if you strip everything away, if money wasn't part of the equation, what would you actually spend your days doing? And, you know, I feel like similar to what you said, I found that. And I think that makes you, you know, one of the luckiest people if you can have that, because I meet all of these people that, you know, are making a lot of money and they're unhappy, and they're sort of on this treadmill, and it's like, what's next? And, you know, it's not their fault, because we're not taught to really think any differently. But I think, yeah, to find that it is really lucky. And it's something, you know, we need to educate others about. We need to educate other people about just being able to strip things back and, you know, look at how do you actually define success? You know, what does that mean to you? Because it's different for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think like, and I have different, I guess I have different types of success in my life. Do you know what I mean? If you took what I do for work and said, what does success look then, and what does success look like as a dad, and what does it look like as a husband, and all of those things. But ultimately, laced through all of them is the ability to kind of be with myself and know who I am, and to be present in all of those experiences, you know. And I don't always find that easy, to be present in my experiences, you know, and I miss a lot because of that. I miss a lot from not being present. Yeah, and from like doing things that are pretty special, but for whatever reason I was overwhelmed and so wasn't able to be present, you know, and I miss a lot in that way. But the old saying of "this too shall pass," you may not, you know, often it's quite a well used quote now.
For sure.
Could be, but it's useful, you know, because it's useful in the bad times, but it's also useful in those moments when I do feel present. I like really think I'm going to try and, you know, I'm really going to enjoy these moments when I'm really there, because for me, they're sometimes fleeting, you know?
No, same for me, mate. I've actually got this too shall pass as a reminder daily on my phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, definitely a fan of that one.
I love that. What? So does it just come up on your phone like at a certain time or random times every day?
Certain times I've got little different things to try and remind. Not they don't really often, you know, I don't follow them often, but yeah, I have them prop up on the phone as a daily reminder just to
Love that.
get my
I love that.
back in. Yeah. So with your work, how do you find the balance of or is this hard for you to find the balance with doing it and then not obsessing about the work and sort of looking, you know, taking away from what you're doing in your own mind and, you know, looking at how you can just sort of get to the next level, the next level, the next level? How do you find, is it hard for you to find that balance of, you know, really embracing what you're doing, but also not looking so far ahead?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, whenever anybody starts a question off to me of how do you find the balance, my head straight away goes, the answer to this is going to be that I don't. Right? Because look, I do a lot of work to try and stay as balanced, and I tend to try and use the word inclusive, right? Where I'm like, you know, I try and make sure that I include the good and the bad and all that kind of stuff, because balance is like really hard. But I have a lot of spaces in my life. For me, I have some men that I meet with regularly, either in person or online, just to go over things and kind of hold myself a little bit accountable, because like the truth is I run away with all of it, you know. I've got my examples. I've got my online course, you know, and I just love that I'm able to do this thing that I created that gives people the opportunity to kind of go on a similar journey to what I went on, right? And I've done it. And when I did it and I put it out there for the first time and people signed up, it was just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. But then very quickly, I'm on to, right, next one I'm going to do, I want double the people on it. And then if you're not careful, the next one isn't about what it started out as, right? The next one's about doubling the numbers. And so I have to like really bring myself back and go, no, remember why you're doing this. Everything else will come. And that's been my experience, by the way. When I'm fully aligned with it, everything else comes. So you do get caught up in it. Same with like even, you know, and this is probably relatable to a lot of people, like social media metrics. Mm-hmm. You know, like I recently had like a big influx of followers on my Instagram, and my head's in it then. I'm like crazy, you know. I'm on it every day checking, okay, there's another X amount of people have followed me, and then it's obviously like it does on socials and that you have these little influx if something does well, and then it's like teeters off and slows off. And then you're like, oh no, I need to keep this level now because this doesn't feel as good as it did when it was there. And it's so easy. I mean, I'd love to tell you that I'm on top of it all and it never runs away with me, but that's just not my truth. It does. But what I have in my life today is processes to be able to catch that as soon as I can, or at least be aware of it and be like, I'm way caught up in this at the moment. I need to pull myself away. And so I catch it much quicker today, and then can bring myself back into something that feels more centralized, you know, that's not so polarized in one way. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, or whether it just sounds like I don't. The answer is no, I don't find balance, but that's probably true to a degree.
I don't know. I don't know if there is such thing as proper perfect balance anyway. And it's like, you know, like the stuff you're saying, like I think there's no, it's not about, there's no end to this stuff. Like, it's
Mm.
not about finding, I'm going to, eventually get to a point where I can manage myself and not get caught up in things. We're human, and we live in, it's actually impossible. I think it's the wrong messaging that people give to people, that let's just solve a problem. It's like, we learn and we grow and we make mistakes and we change and we evolve until we die. Otherwise, what are you doing? And I think it's more really about having that self-awareness and honesty, like what you were talking about there, than trying to get it right. And I think in the industries we're in, I've seen so many people where exactly what you were saying happens. People get caught up in, they have a bit of success and then it goes to the next level, and then 5 years down the track, it's turned into something that is just completely in contrast to why they actually started doing it in the first place, and it's lost all the authenticity and impact of why they did it, and they don't really, and then they've actually just gone back to probably what they were before. It's like this weird thing. So it's human nature to to behave like that, but it's about catching ourselves and being honest and being accountable, or having people to keep us accountable, and realizing that that's going to be a forever process, but we've just got to manage it. I think that's one of the key points.
Yeah. There's a guy, I don't know, have you ever heard of Alan Watts? It's like an old school philosopher. Yeah. He says that life is like he's brilliant, isn't he? Yeah. He says that life is very much like a dance, that it's not about getting from start to the finish, right? No dance is about how quickly you can get to the end. It's all about what you do in the middle and the way in which you dance and move in the middle. And I think, without kind of being too out there, that is what life is like for me, And the times when I have felt like I've had it all figured out, they're always followed by a big crash, And it comes back to this too shall pass, right? When I think I've got it all figured out, it will pass. And I'll be back down there again thinking I've got no idea what's going on and I don't know where to go from here, And that's life, like you say, and you grow and you evolve and you change as a result, right?
Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organisation, and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups, and you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events. We've got courses. We've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me.
No, it's so true. It's like we know these things, and then time and time again, every bit of evidence tells me, like I don't know, there'll be anything. I was wanting to do a book, and then that happened, got that out there, and I spent probably a day or something when it came out thinking, oh, this is so cool, I've done this book. You sort of feeling gratitude, and then a day later I'm thinking, okay, why is it not selling more? What's next? I need to do the next project. I need to go and I need to make a film now. Well, why haven't I not made a film? What's going on? It's like literally no end. I think like Donald Trump is probably the epitome of looking at that example of the guy's become president, and that's still not enough for him. It's like, well, what the hell? Like, when are you going to be happy? When can you relax? Yeah, it's like no end.
Yeah, and it's true, isn't it? And again, we all get caught up in that, right? We all get caught up in that, and it's great to be in the company of people who can admit that, and could be, this is who I am, and this is what I recognize about myself. Because, as you say, I think there's a lot of people in this. I see a lot of things online anyway, where people are sort of talking about doing X, Y, and Z and smashing life and everything being perfect as a result. And I think it's never happened for me, or at the times, like I say, it's felt like it's happened at times, but then it's ultimately followed by a crash. And but that's how I've developed humility, I guess.
Exactly. I guess like people like The Rock, who I actually love, I find inspiring, but I think the messaging is so wrong. It's like, you got to be the hardest work in the room. I sleep for 3 hours a night. I do this. It's like, most people would try that for a day and have a bloody breakdown. Like, it's not going to work, and it's not. But that we're surrounded by that kind of messaging everywhere.
Yeah, and that, again, that's the kind of nothing's black and white, yeah. Because I'm like you, I really like The Rock, yeah, and like you, I don't like the messaging. However, I've had times in my life where I listen to them videos, like The Rock and who's the other dude from America who I can't remember his name. He like ran with broken legs or something. Anyway, but they're like, Jesus, you know what I mean? Why I can't remember his name. It was on the end of my tongue there. But like all those people who are just like push yourself to the limit. Like every now and then,
David Goggins, I think is
Goggins. That's it. Yeah, that's him, mate. Yeah. Like every now and then, I need a bit of that. Like I need a bit of like exactly. Like give me some like I'm gonna do that. I need some of that energy sometimes. So I feel like there's space for it all in the end, really, right? Because like you, I think the messaging is wrong. And, if I want to go for a long run or something, or I want to push myself, I'm listening to The Rock and Dave Goggins, right? In the morning, that's what I'm doing. So yeah. So there's a space for all of it, I guess, isn't there?
Yeah, it just again comes down to education. I think if someone's not educated and doesn't have that self-awareness, that's when it can become dangerous. And you can you can't then, like the way you were talking about it, make that decision and think, okay, I'm going to use this, for this component of my life, but I'm not going to live by every word that these people say. I read resilience is something you talk about a lot and do a lot of work with men. What is some of the messaging that you try and push forward to them, or how do you go about that work, and what do you see with men? How big of a problem are things like toxic masculinity and things like that?
I think it's a big problem. I think actually any kind of the sort of gender stereotypes that are pushed onto children from a young age, I think are a problem, right? I always say it's much safer for young boys in school lessons to be angry than it is for them to cry, right? Because if you cry in sort of secondary school, you're going to get bullied, right? It's not safe to do that. That we need that to change. The opposite is true for women, by the way, right? Women, angry young girls they'll find themselves in a doctor's surgery pretty quickly. If a boy throws a chair in a lesson, he'll get thrown out and then maybe sit in isolation and come back in the lesson the next day. If a girl threw a chair, people would be like, there's something wrong with this child, right? So like the gender stereotypes are a big thing. But when it comes to resilience, I think I always separate toughness as being slightly separate to resilience. So if you take somebody like David Goggins, right, or The Rock, I think what they do is they talk consistently always about toughness. Now, I think we need a bit of toughness. Sometimes you need a bit of David. You need, like we were just saying, yeah. But if you think of a tough material as something like a hard plastic, the strength is that it can take a lot of impact and it stays fixed and strong and exactly as you need it. But the problem with that is that too much impact and it will snap. And when it snaps, you can't use it anymore. It's completely useless. Yeah. So you can't just be tough all of the time. Long-term resilience to me is more like being like elastic, knowing that you can sort of bend and distort and you can move out of shape. And the strength is that you can return to your original form afterwards. And so you need both. I think what I recognize in a lot of people, particularly in men, is that they think resilience is to just be tough. And so they're just constantly thinking, I need to stay fixed and strong and unaffected by everything. And we lose a lot of men because of that. They reach their breaking point. I was 24 when I reached mine, and we very nearly lost me. And that was my breaking point. And today I'm much more able to know when I'm overwhelmed or I'm deeply affected by something, I have an awareness today that I am, and an awareness that I need to do something about that, and that's what I teach. And that's why I try and get people to explore with me. And it can be quite, it can be really impactful for people to realize I don't have to be tough all the time. I can be more like elastic, and I can allow myself to move out of shape.
No, I think completely liberating, because you sort of, like you're saying, people get to that point that you were at, that I've been close to, because if you feel like there's no other option than to be strong and keep pushing forward, then that will snap you. So it's completely liberating to be able to say to yourself, hey, it's okay. Even if I fuck up, even if this happens, even if I make the wrong choice, even if my worst fear in the future actually comes true, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
If you can really believe that, then that's the most powerful thing, because then what can nothing, you can deal with anything when you're living in that mindset. You know that nothing's going to break you in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And like you say, liberating is a really good word, actually. I think a lot of men do find it liberating to, because I always bring my own experience to all the work that I do. And I think that's important. I think particularly with men, by the way, I think that men are much better at learning shoulder to shoulder. So like feeling like I'm coming in next to you and being shoulder to shoulder with you and saying, here, let's share some experiences and let's talk about some things that have worked for me and share. I think men learn better that way than an expert stood at the front saying you should do X, Y, and Z, that shoulder to shoulder learning resonates with a lot of men. And so when I share my own experience and like when you share yours, I think it gives men permission to explore and share theirs. And that, that's really powerful, because I never had that when I was growing up. I never had that. I never had that when I was in my early 20s and really struggling. I never saw another man like talk about their struggle in a way that resonated, but also gave me hope, like when you share then that you've been to that place, but I see you there as the person that you are today, as somebody who's living a certain life and you're still struggling. That gives me a lot of hope, I would have certainly done when I was in my early 20s, and there was nothing like that out there. And that's what I needed,
No, it's same to me, exactly. And it's like, it is so true. And the first, whenever I started over 10 years ago, the first talk I ever did was just sharing my own story, and the work that I do to this day with Move Your Mind, with the educational work, I still feel like the most powerful thing is just storytelling, or doing what we're doing here, just telling, sharing stories, being honest and authentic, going and, I make sure to incorporate that in everything, because I've just seen it, as you're saying, I've seen it time and time again. I've been in companies where I've done a talk, and we had, one of them, we had a group of men in, a factory where they've been in this same factory for the last 25 years, and they're sort of sniggering at the beginning, who's this kid coming and telling us about mental health, and eventually you get them to open up. And we had one of them come up, it was like a Friday afternoon on this one, and he came up to me and the head of HR and told us he had a plan to end his life in 2 days' time, and he wasn't coping. And this was a guy that everyone saw as, leader in the company, never had a problem. People, relied on him. He had 3 kids, and he just was about to snap. He thought there was no way out, and he talked about it, and he went and got help. And, it's not like we did anything groundbreaking. Everyone can do it, but it's because for the first time in his life, potentially, he felt like it was maybe okay to go and just talk about the problem rather than put on the front. So it is so critical, these kind of conversations.
Yeah, and that's again, especially for men, and I think, wow, what a powerful story, by the way. What a powerful story. And, just from you sharing in the way that you did, made him feel seen in a way that saved his life. And I think for many different reasons, that gets undervalued. Because when I look at like the big moments in my journey, they mainly come from an experience with somebody who just articulated something that I couldn't articulate, so it was trapped in me, and somebody says, I don't know, I feel like this and this happens, and I'm like, that's me. You've said, like, you've vocalized what I'm feeling, and it's a huge breakthrough. So you can never underestimate the power of it. And all the work that I do, and it sounds similar to the way in which you do yours. I'm all about keeping it human, and I'm all about it being real. And let's really like explore and become curious about who we are as people, rather than making it all academic all the time. Because a lot of the people I work with, the whole academic stuff doesn't necessarily always resonate. They just want to feel human in their experience,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think again, it's such a complicated area that there's enough academic stuff out there. There's enough really good stuff out there, and obviously, if someone needs to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or get professional help, and you should do that stuff if you need to. But there is a huge missing element in that area of how do we just teach each other and learn to be human and learn to actually go back to being our most honest and authentic selves, and that part that's been suppressed since we were a kid and has been drummed out of us because we've been programmed to think in a certain way. That's what is really needed.
Mm.
So another question I had for you was, I mean, in your journey, what are some of the other things that you found have worked for you? What have been part of that process? Has it been things like, has therapy been a part in it? Has it, exercise you've talked about, I guess, having these authentic conversations and looking into yourself, and, what are some of the things you've found that have worked, or has it just been, trial and error or mix of different things?
It's been different things at different stages. I would certainly say that. And so, like, what's worked for me in certain moments, but wouldn't or doesn't work for me currently. Do you know what I mean? So it's always like you say, ever changing, ever evolving. Group work has been really important for me. I find group work more powerful on a personal level than I do one-to-one. I find one-to-one work a little bit too intense. And I also end up in one-to-one work becoming a good patient rather than actually doing any work on myself, right? I get caught up in that. That's just my experience. So group work's been really, really important for me. Spaces with other people that are struggling, right? Like peer-to-peer groups have been really, really, really some of the biggest stuff for me. And then more recently, well, not more, when I say more recently, I mean in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, breathwork became a really big part of what I use. And I deliver a lot of breathwork sessions myself now. And that for me is a good way of being able to process and release emotions without necessarily having to rationalize and talk about them. Because the thing with me and talking is that I have the ability to talk myself out of any situation, right? I know I do. And that can be to my detriment when I'm trying to talk myself out of having to feel something, because I'll talk myself out of having to feel it. And, I'm an expert at talking about difficult situations that I experienced, but disconnecting from them and never really having to feel them. And what I found with breath work, when done in certain ways, is that goes beyond that and goes straight to the kind of emotional part of me and helps me to process and release those emotions. And so doing like a big breathwork session every now and then has been great for me, more recently. Yeah.
My name's Nick Bracks, and I'm a storyteller who has dedicated my entire adult life to creating positive conversations around mental health. In recent years, discussions around mental health have become less taboo and entered the mainstream vernacular. I've delivered over 1,000 mental health seminars around the globe, including several TED Talks, and I believe we all have a story to tell. In my book, Move Your Mind, I cover my story and stories from people that inspire me, as well as insights from world-leading mental health experts. This book will help you to learn how to recognise mental health issues before they become a problem. Use your personal challenges as motivators, take ownership of your well-being, and create new daily habits that increase happiness and reduce stress.
No, I love all of that, and again, relate so much because it's so similar with me. And the other work I do is in acting, and I found it so difficult with, especially so many different acting techniques to sort of get out of my head. But I've been doing this one called PEM. It's like a German, it's like Perdicamp method, I think is the name, and it's all to do with breathing, and it's like using these different breathing and physical sort of movements to actually evoke an emotion, and that I found works so well because then you don't have the opportunity to try and think your way through it. It's just actually having that reaction happen and getting it out. So I think it's like such a powerful thing, such an important thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think we often sort of rationalize as a way, we use the rational part of our brain to escape the emotional part of our brain all too often,
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I think we I had a few other things I wanted to ask, but I think you've covered so many things here and been so open. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. We finish every episode with just 5 closing questions, and these can be short answers or whatever comes to mind. So yeah, they can be sort of quicker, short fire answers. But the first one is, what did you like most about your childhood? What's your best childhood memory?
The first, I've been asked this a few times, right? And let me tell you, just truthfully, the first answer that comes to my head is that when I found alcohol when I was 12 years old. But that kind of tells you, I guess, a little bit about how I experienced childhood. But lots of experiences with my mum. I've always been very close with my mum. And we used to play these little games. My mum was like the expert at creating games with pen and paper. And so sitting down with my mum and doing these games where we were just playing the games on pen and paper was my best memory. As simple as that sounds.
Yeah, no, I love it. What do you think's the biggest burden on mental health in society today?
Emotional avoidance and the ways in which we trick and deceive ourselves to emotionally avoid. I think when we look at mental health, if we're not careful, a lot of what's being presented as the solution is just new ways to avoid having to feel anything. And I think it's a real problem, actually.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I really like that. What's your personal definition of happiness?
The ability to move through my full range of emotions and know that that's okay.
What are you most afraid of?
I don't know why I find this so hard to answer. I've been asked this a few times. What am I most afraid of?
Yeah.
Like abandonment or rejection. I think I fear the most. It's ingrained in my makeup to be likable.
Yeah.
So I think certainly subconsciously, probably more than consciously, I fear rejection more than anything.
Yeah, it's a hard one to get past, that one.
Yeah.
I share that with you, mate. So final one, what are you most proud of?
How I am as a dad today. When I was a kid, because of the way that my dad was, I just wanted to have kids and be a good dad, whatever that meant. And I feel like I can look all my children in the eye today and be like, I'm the best version of me that's possible at the moment. And I'm very close with my children. So without doubt, that's what makes me most proud.
Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, thank you so much, mate, for being so open and coming and talking to me. And final thing as well, for in the show notes, but where can we send them?
My website's joshconnolly.co.uk. You can find all my social links there, but I'm probably most active on Instagram, and that's just Josh_FFW. So yeah, come see me.
Well, thank you again, mate, for making the time.
Pleasure, enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks to Josh Connolly for joining me today for Move Your Mind. And just a reminder that the Move Your Mind book is now available globally. You can order it at nickbracks.com. And the Move Your Mind community platform is now available. We have all of our courses, live events, links to information. We've got updates, topics, video interviews of the podcast. It is there for you all to sign up to. All you need to do is go to moveyourmind.me, or you can go to nickbracks.com and find the links. Thanks again for joining us today for Move Your Mind.